a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele, and this is the Breakfast Club. Today, in our program, we will be talking about some of the things that many people hardly talk about. We know there is a lot of violence that happens in our country, but most of the times, the victims of such violence, especially the violence that is perpetrated by the state, you find that they are either too scared to talk about it, or they are just not willing to talk about it. In my program today, I'm joined by Takunda Madzana, who is the National Youth Executive in the MDC, led by Nelson Chamisa, and is going to share with us his experiences in the hands of the state agents. Some of them, some of us, or some of the people refer to them as the ferret team. So, going to hear from him what happened to him and how he has managed to, live with the experience. Takunda, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, tell us what happened to you.
Yeah, on the 26th of July this year, I was home at around 12 a.m. I was asleep in my room. Then suddenly I just heard some funny sounds outside. But before I could actually check on what was actually happening outside, my door was not closed. Because, in Makwekwe, I stay in New Makwekwe. In Makwekwe, our toilets are outside. So I wanted to visit the toilet before I could then come and sleep. Then before I could even do that, I then heard some funny sounds outside. Then the next thing I saw, like my door being opened. It was just pushed once. And the next thing, I knew actually that there was a problem. I never even thought about criminals, armed robbers or anything, but I knew that it was something which was most likely going to be something political, because there was a demonstration which was coming on the 31st. Like they always do that, whenever there's a demonstration, these guys would target activists. Then before I could actually take any action, the next thing that happened is that I saw 4 guys just getting into my room, and they were all in masks, black ones, like not ordinary masks, the one that actually covers the whole head, and I could actually see, the only thing that I could actually see were their eyes. Then they were heavily armed. They had AK-47 rifles and pistols with them. Then the next thing, they, like as soon as they got into the house, they pointed a gun at me and told me to shut up. And one of the guys started actually slapping me, and I was putting on a jacket. I was then asked to take off my jacket. He was like, "Pisa, pisa, pisa, pisa," and I was forced to take off my jacket. And the other thing is that they were also fluent in Shona. There were 4 Shona guys. I also come from a Shona background. I can actually tell between someone who is Shona or Ndebele. The accent could actually tell me that these guys were Shona like me. Then the next thing, I was forced out of the house by 2 guys. Then the other 2 remained searching my room. Then as soon as I got to the gate, that is when I realized that these guys were driving a 4x4 Isuzu twin cab, white in color, and it had a canopy. And I was bundled. They'd left it with the door open, one of the doors, like at the back. I was then bundled into the car and forced to put my head in between the front seats, facing down, so that I could not even see where the car was going. Then maybe after about 5 minutes, the other 2 guys who were searching my room joined us. That is where there was a driver and the other guy who was seated in front, who was more like the one who was commanding the 4 of them. They then drove off from my place, and the only thing that I still remember is that they turned left. Then they turned left again. Then from there, the car was like 32 to like rotate the car at on one place, so that from there I couldn't even tell whether the car was now going north or south or anywhere. So they then drove about 30 to 40 minutes, up to a point where I could then hear that the car was now probably in a highway. It was now moving fast. Then later on it turned left. Then I then heard again that it was now probably in a dusty road. Then after about 30 or so minutes, that is when the car then stopped. And I could actually tell that we were now in the middle of a bush. It was not in town. Then as they were also driving, they were just quiet. Mom, none of them was speaking. They were so quiet. The only thing that was happening is that each time I tried to raise my hand, because it was now painful, each time I tried to raise my hand, one of the guys would hit me with the part of a pistol on my head, so that time my head remains like on the same position. Then as soon as we got to where they parked their car, they started harassing me, without even saying anything. One would grab me, pull me this side, and then the other one would just hit me using their parts, like of their guns. Then later on, that is when they then started asking me questions. And
So from the time you leave your house to where you stop, you're not asked anything. Even at the home, they never asked you
they
anything.
didn't say anything. They didn't say anything. They were just quiet along the way. I couldn't even tell. There was not even a sound. The only thing that we could all hear was the engine of the car. Not
So
even a radio.
they get you home, they don't even ask your name.
They didn't. They didn't. From the look of things, I think they actually knew me, maybe by face, because they did not even ask any question or even tell me anything about who they were looking for. Because if they didn't know the person, I'm sure they were supposed to ask for if I was the person or not, or just to look for my identity. But in my case, they didn't do anything. They just picked me from home, and then the next thing I was put in a car, then they drove off. So as we got to the place where they parked the car, that is when they then started asking me questions. And most of the questions that they were asking me had something to do with the demonstration which was coming on the 31st of July. And like who was funding the demonstration, who was planning for the demonstration, how was I going to contribute in that demonstration. And they also, it seems as if they had been told or they'd been informed that I'm one of the people who were actually going to lead that demonstration here in Bulawayo. I'm one of the people who were planning or who were behind the planning of that demonstration. And they asked me a lot of questions, and also some individuals, they asked me about some people from civic organizations, Dumisani Nkomo, Pilani. They asked me about one of our activists, Mzacha. And also they asked me about Zenzele. And yeah, all the people that they thought maybe they could be having a hand in the politics of Bulawayo. They asked me a lot of about a lot of people. And as I was trying to explain, like one thing also that was that was happening is that these guys never took a no as an answer. And almost everything that I would say was actually lied to them. So each time I would answer, they would either slip me or just find a way of intimidating me. Then later on, as they were doing that, one of the guys who was seated in front, the one that I said maybe was actually the boss, like the one who was commanding them. Then he instructed one of the guys to take, like he said it in show now, like the other guys were beating me up using their parts, because we're in a car, there was no space for them to be using, like, to beat me up properly. So he then said, no, don't do that. You can take, like in Shona, he said, Tora Simbizi Masuri. Like that is when they then pulled the electric shockers that were behind the seat, the back seat. Then from there they started using electric shockers to then torture me. And like I said, every time when I would say something, everything that I would say was a lie. They ask you something sometimes before you even answer. You are electrocuted. You are shocked using by the using with the electric shockers that they were using. So yeah, they did that for some time. And as I was explaining, I then like what we always do is actually common in other party, that even in ZAPU they refer to their president as president, the president of their party. So it was, as I was explaining, I then mentioned that they asked me about job scala. That is when I then said, I know job scala is one of us, but we usually take like a final word from our president in terms of everything. Then they were like, your president who? And I said, Nelson Chamisa. And they were so angry one of the guys who was seated in front, who was the driver, jumped off the car. He banged the door, and then he opened the door. That is when he said, Buddha, 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 like in Shona. Like, Buddha, Buddha, Buddha. So all the other guys then disembarked from the car, and I was also forced out. Before I even came out of the car, he then instructed, one of the guys who also instructed that I should take off my shirt, because I was now left with my shirt, my boxer short, and my socks. And as I was trying to properly take off my shirt, then he then pulled the shirt and then tearing the buttons and everything. Then I had to take off my shirt in that violent manner. And that is also when I then realized that the car was actually parked facing a small dam. There was a small dam just in front of the car. And and I was also forced to take off my boxer. The only thing that I was now left with is my socks on my body. Then they then started one guy would say sit down, then the other guy would say lie down, the other one would say no, let's go. As they were doing that, one of the guys then started pulling me, saying then the next thing was have you ever been to this place? Like wakwafika. They was like, no, I've never been here to this place. And he was like, oh, okay. If I'm to tell you that there are crocodiles in this dam, uzayala or sitting. And I was like, no, I would not deny, because I don't know this place. And that dam, it was it was not a very big dam, it was a small dam. And from what I saw, looking at it, I think it was it was a river. Then there was a bridge which was cutting across there, which was being used to cross that river. Then later on, I think maybe they just had to build a small dam on the other end, and they converted that small place into that river into a small dam. And that bridge, which was being used maybe some time ago, remained there, but now there was no road which was now being used to cross. So that bridge was now cutting through the dam, and it ended somewhere in the water. So the place was like that. And me, myself, knowing Bulawayo, I've been to so many places here in Bulawayo, and because of the activism and politics, I know a lot of areas here in Bulawayo. I've never been to that place. And I even from the people that I asked, I described that place, no one has actually managed to tell me, to identify the place where that place could be. So, as we were walking, one of the guys, two of them were actually holding my hands. One on the left, the other one on the right, and then the other two guys were on our sides. Then we got to that dam. Then they then instructed me to get inside the water. But now I was walking on top of the bridge, and it was not that deep. So they then told me that walk, like in Shona, pinda, famba. I continued walking, and the water was so dirty, so that I couldn't even see where I was stepping, and it was around. I think by then it was around now it was around 1. As I was walking, they were also instructing me that I should not look back. Ungatalas, sachoka, just walk. As I was walking, I didn't even know what they wanted to do, because the only thing that I knew is that these guys were up to something, and by instructing me to get inside the water, I didn't even know whether they wanted to kill me and dump me into and leave me in that dam or whatever. I wasn't so sure. So as I was walking, I then heard a sound I don't know what. I'm not that much versed with guns, but I just think it was more like in Shona we say coca foot, because I heard a funny sound as if they were now ready to shoot. And then that is when I then stopped walking, and I was just prepared for anything at that moment, because I didn't even know what they were up to. And now I was now almost halfway through the dam, the small dam. Then later on, after about maybe 2 minutes, the other guy then instructed me to come back. I came back, but reverse, moving back reverse, because they didn't want me. Almost every time when they would ask me to do something, they made sure that there was no eye contact between us. They didn't want me to face them directly. I don't know why. Maybe they were afraid that maybe I could probably identify them, or I wasn't so sure. So I then walked, like coming back reversewards. Then later, as I was doing that, the other guy then also said, "No, stop. Can you lie down?" I then had to lie down
in the water.
in the water, and it was very cold on the day, very, very, very cold. But anyway, it was now, the weather and the coldness was now least of my problems. All I wanted was to just try and comply. Probably maybe these guys were going to leave me alive, because that was the only thing that I was now fighting for. I then lied down. I had to lie down in the water. Then they started telling me, instructing me, row like what they do. I think this is part of their training in the military. I was instructed to row, like coming this side, going that side, back and forth like that. I think I did that for about 10 or so times. Then later on, one of the guys who was putting on more like gumboots, like, was instructed to join me in the water. And he's the one who was also, because there are electric shockers that they were using. The other side was a torch, and then the other side, that is where there were those pins which would then shock you. So the one who was holding one of the electric shockers then joined me, and then he started using the electric shockers again to torture me. And they were actually, what they would do is that they would like lift my legs up, and then the electric shockers were used to like they were targeting my feet, not any other part of my body. And myself, at some point, I was electrocuted by I was actually shocked by an electric shocker by mistake some way back. I had a guy who had an electric, and then he shocked me by mistake. And that one, the shock that I got some time ago when the friend of mine did that to me, was totally different from what I was getting this time around. Because these guys, I don't know whether it was a special type of electric shockers or what, but each time they would shock me like under my feet, the pain was not, the pain would actually come from my knees going up. That is where I would actually feel the pain. Like being under my feet, it was more like, it was just like something piercing through my skin. It was not even painful, but the pain was actually coming like from my knees going up. And yeah, it was really bad. It was really, really, really bad. They did that for some time, and then they started again asking me questions. Now this time around, they were now asking me about Promise Mkwananzi, some of the guys from Harare. So I think some of the questions were now coming from my phone, because they'd also taken my phone, and it forced me to give them my password. So they were asking me a lot of questions about guys even from Harare, activists like from all over. So, and they would
So
ask,
they were asking you the names that were in your phone.
yeah, and almost everything that, like, most of the questions that they asked me about were now to do with the funding and where the money was coming from, if ever there was a money which was coming from abroad, and my relationship with Promise Mkwananzi, my relationship with Job Sikala. Yeah, those were the main things that they were now asking me about as they were torturing me. But one funny thing, like I said, almost every time I would try to say something, everything that I would say was a lie. You answer sometimes before you even complete a statement. The next thing is like, no, you are joking. You are like, you are still joking. So yeah, I tried to explain, and they would continuously do that, up to a point, where because now, like, I was now in pain. I was now in serious pain. The combination of, yeah, the electric shockers, umqando and amanzi, it was just something else. So I reached a point where I even told them that, if there's anything that you would want to do after this process that you are doing, you rather do it now, because there's nothing more that I can say. And besides everything that I'm telling you, you just say it's a lie. And that is when then one of the guys, the one that I said that he was more like the boss, he then turned away and went back to the car. Then when he returned, he was now carrying a rope. And yeah, he then instructed the guy who was using electric shockers to torture me, to then tie me like my legs and my arms and my whole body. My hands were actually tied like this. So after that, they then, like, they were just saying some funny things like, yeah, no, this is the end of you. We are going to leave you here. You think we are joking? Like, you think this country is a joke? You guys, you think you can just take this country just like that, and you think you are big enough that you can overthrow this government? Like, but they were saying it in Shona. Afana munoderera, you think kuti mungatora nyika inoi, things like that. Then the next thing, then, like, we were on top of that bridge, but the other side was actually deeper than where we were. So they then threw me on the other side, the deeper side one. Then I don't know whether they were counting minutes or what. Later on, they then took me out. And as soon as I was out, they then started using electric shockers again. You know, that thing where you have just, you have been forced to drink dirty water, because the moment you are down there, you somehow take that dirty water involuntarily. So the guys, as soon as I was out, they then started, you know, as I was struggling to breathe, to try and recover from the chokes and everything, they then started using electric shockers again. And then before they could ask anything, I was again forced down the dam again. They did that about 3 times before they could ask me anything. Then that is when they then took me out, and then they had to put me again on top of that small bridge, which was, and it was a bit shallow, and it was in water, but it was not as deep as the other side. Then that was the time when I was really confused, and I could even struggle to say a word. Then later on, they then continued, like, asking me questions and again torturing me using electric shockers. And up to a point where it was now difficult for me to talk or say anything. Like the boss, the one who was like in charge, would frequent, like, he would make phone calls, and he was always moving up and down, going to the car, coming back and forth. And each time he came back, you know, that is when they would then intensify the torture, because these guys, sometimes they would ask me questions in his absence, like trying to, and each time he would come back, he would then instruct them, no, this guy should tell us. Then they would then intensify the torture. So I reached a point where now talking was actually difficult because of the pain, because of the cold and everything. You know, I could actually feel, you know, I want to talk, but my voice and everything my body was just in pain, and I actually couldn't feel that I have a body. I could see that I've got legs, I've got hands, but I couldn't feel like, you know, I've got legs, I've got hands. So that was the time when then one of the guys said, no, we can no longer get anything from this guy. He can't talk, he can't do anything. And from the way they would discuss the things, I also felt like maybe they had also other targets, maybe the same night, beyond myself. So they then, one of, like, that boss then instructed the other guy to say, no, Musi, like, would leave him. Then he said, Sumukaiwe, like, telling me to stand up. It was now difficult for me because of the pain. And I actually struggled for me to then stand up. And one of the guys, it actually to help me up. Then they then took me out of the water, because it was now even difficult for me to walk. Then as soon as we got out of the water, one of the guys, and two of them actually had to, one was holding on my left, my right hand, and then the other one was on my left side. Then they took me back to the car. And as we went back, that is when I also realized, because now I could see, like, closely, because they were all moving, carrying torches, and I could see the ground. That is when I actually saw that there was no road. That bridge was just a bridge, and there was no longer any road which was being used either by cars or by individuals to cross. So we go to the car, and as we got there, one of the guys had gone there, I think, before. Like, he was seated at the back. He just came out of the car, and then he started slapping me, you know, without even saying anything. slapped me. Then later on he said, "Afana no derera," like liyadelela. And no derera afana mimi. From today you should know what we can determine between life and death, and you won't even report it anyway. We can kill you, we can do whatever we want, and there's no way you can report. You make news for a day, you make news for 2 days, and after that people just forget about you. Then there was nothing that I could do. Then later they actually started discussing whether they should put me back into the car, like be like on the canop, or they should put me back to where I was before as we were coming. Then they later on agreed that no, let's just take him because there are things that we still need to know from him. Then I was then again bundled into the car, same position, and they also joined me. Then later on they started the car. Then like as they were before we even left, now they were busy with my phone. Like they were asking me about almost everything, every chat. Who is this? Who is this one? Who is this one? Who is this one? Yeah, they asked me everything, up to a point of even asking about my girlfriends and like almost everyone who was around me. They asked me a lot of things, checking messages, checking even if there was any money sent to me at some point from abroad or anywhere, text messages, and they were asking me everything, pictures. They just checked everything. So they then started the car and then started driving. And along the way, most of the things that they were now saying were mostly threats. We should leave this, we will be monitoring you, we can even kill you. And later on, they then started also saying that even if we are to leave you today or anywhere we are going to leave you, make sure that you won't say this to anyone. Whether ulimele kumba ulimalanga, just make sure that this is not going to even, we don't want to see this either on the social media, any newspaper. You don't share this with even your closest person. And when they were now saying that, I was now convinced that they wanted to dump me somewhere or they wanted to leave me. And later on, then like sometimes they would just keep quiet. And then later on, they then stopped the car. And one of the guys then said, "We are going to give you back your phone on condition that you live your normal life as if nothing ever happened to you. We don't want to hear anything. We don't want you to report anything to anyone. It's off. You switch it on when you get home. We don't even want to hear maybe there's anyone who has come to pick you up. You will find a way of getting home. And when you get home, whether you are injured or not, you don't go to hospital, you don't do anything. You are going to recover and make sure that this is not known by anyone." So they then opened the door of their car. Then they just pushed me outside. Then one of the guys then said, you should, can you run? I couldn't run. So I just walked like some meters away. And then later on, I heard them closing the doors of their cars, and then the car drove off.
So where did they leave you?
It was like in the bush, but I could actually see the houses. So what I then did is that I then walked, like I didn't know where I was. My mind was just telling me that, at first I thought maybe I was in Country Park or somewhere like outside my outskirts of our town. But I could actually see that there were houses, like Amalites. Then I then walked. That is when I then started like checking addresses, and only to discover the first thing that I first saw was actually the booster, which is Makoko North. There's this booster, I think maybe in the one, so that is when I then discovered that I had been left behind in the bush, but behind Makoko North.
So you could walk home.
So yeah, it was not easy. It was not easy. I could hardly talk. I could hardly walk because of the torture. But one thing also that then forced me to try and find a way of, because I was afraid that these guys might even think twice and come back for me again. So I did to try and move from where they left me. And besides, also I was also left naked.
So
So
they left with your clothes.
they didn't. The only thing that they gave me was was my shirt, but underneath I had no box, I had nothing. So yeah, it was now difficult, but the most important thing now for me was my life. All the other things were no longer like as important as they would have been in a normal situation. So I then slowly tried to move like from where they'd left me, and that is when I then got to houses because I needed help, and I could only get help from Esentlin. So I then got to the houses, but now it was late. I think it was around past 3, if I'm not mistaken, past 3 to 4. So yeah, I then switched on my phone later on, of course against their instructions, because I needed to call some people at least to try for them to try and locate me, so that at least I could get some help. One of the, like, I phoned 2 people, but none of them was able to come, because I think what these guys do is that whenever they strike a target, they make sure also that, and mind you, that was the time of the that was soon after the curfew. So these guys knew that almost everyone who was driving during the night was either one of them, or was probably someone who was going to come trying to help one of their victims. So the 2 guys that I phoned, they all tried to come, but none of them could actually get to where I was. The other one was intercepted as he was trying to get into Magwegwe from Pumla Road. He turned just by Jehovah's Witness Church as he was coming to Magwegwe, and he was intercepted there by a Honda Fit, and he had to make a U-turn, and that Honda Fit followed him up to the robots. Like, he could actually tell the movement of the car to tell him that no, this is not normal. So the other one also was coming from the other end, and again he also told me that he had been intercepted by another car. So none of them could actually none of them could actually come to my rescue. So I then had to wait up to around 4, and that is when I then thought, no, I should be getting help somewhere around. And I knocked at one of them. I don't even know the person. I just saw the lights on. That is when I got there, and I asked for help from one of the houses in Magwegwe North, the last houses before you cross the small bush to New Magwegwe. And the person opened. Fortunately, he just opened the window, and then I tried to narrate my story, to shorten it as much as I could, because the only thing that I wanted from him was probably trousers. Then he understood me, but as I was trying to explain, a car came, and the guy, actually, myself included, I actually thought that maybe those guys had followed me. So I tried to hide, and then the guy had to close his window. The only time he then opened, or he just opened the window and gave me a trousers for me to put on, and then told me that he could not accommodate me because he was also afraid that these guys could actually come after him. I thanked him. I took the trousers, and that is when I then I got something to cover myself up. Then I then continued walking, and I had also to then look for help from one of our comrades who is in our party. That is when I then went to up to around 8 in the morning, when one of my friends then came to pick me up as I was now going to the doctor.
So on a lighter note, you never returned the trousers.
No, no, no. Like the way the guy gave me, he was so much afraid that it was
That
more like,
God never come
yeah,
back.
you
But
should.
would you identify the place to say this is where you were?
Yeah, I think I would. I might not be so sure of the house, but I just know the place. I actually come from Magwegwe. I know the houses and everything, but I just know the place. But for me to identify the exact house now, maybe if I get there, because I've never been there since this thing happened.
So did you report this case to the police?
Up to now, I haven't reported anything.
Do you have any reason why you didn't report?
Like before my abduction, I think a week or 2, the day when I came from our president Nelson Jamisa's mother's funeral, I was phoned by the police from Magwegwe, the PC guys, and I met one of them by the terminus, not at the police camp, and he started asking me questions to do with the demonstration and everything. And the kind of questions that he was asking me were more or less similar to the questions that I was now being asked by these guys who abducted me. The only difference being that these ones were now torturing me. This one was not torturing me. And also the fact that these guys were also, even when they left me, they said something funny. They said, tomorrow you should go to the police camp in Magwegwe. And when you get there, you just tell them that I'm fine and go home. That is what they said. It was, to me, it was an indirect communication to say, we are actually together with those guys. And besides that, even if they had not said that, we have had incidences where people are actually taken even from police stations. The case of Joanna Mamombe, who were actually taken from the police station, and the next thing they found themselves in the hands of people who then tortured them. So I just couldn't, even when these guys left me, I could have just gone straight to the police camp, but it was not even safe for me. It was not even safe for me. So up to now, I haven't reported, and I'm still to decide whether I'm going to report or not, because it's of no use anyway. In our country, you might actually report, and then the next thing you get arrested.
How prevalent was the issue of adoptions amongst your party members? How many other people were adopted?
This year,
I mean, during the run up to 31 demonstrations.
I was actually before me. They had attempted to abduct Arnold Batirai. Actually, the night before, they then came for me, and then they missed him. Then the following day, they came for me. They abducted me. Then after me, there were frequent so many other cases. Some were missed, some they got them, and the latest one was the Takunda Madzana abduction. So there were cases, I think if I'm not mistaken, there were more than 6-7 cases of abductions and attempts to abduct people after me.
You find that most of the people who are adopted have not said anything. And it has taken you a bit of maybe nearly a month to talk about this. Why?
It's only that, the kind of terror and threats that you go through during the process. It actually takes someone who is strong to then stand up and say, I want to talk about this. I can tell you that there's a lot that happens, which even some activists who have been like in the trenches for more than 10-20 years from the time maybe MDC was formed. Some of them would even fail to say anything after going through the horror, because the feeling of being reduced to an object, because like the way they do it, you feel as if you are not equal, you are not a human being, and that thing would emotionally and psychologically destroy you. Besides talking about the physical torture, psychologically that person would be, you just don't feel that you just feel like you are not a human being. So this is why sometimes it then becomes difficult for people to speak out. And the fact that, these people also make you feel that they are actually above the law. They can kill you. They, they can make a decision in a minute to determine whether you are going to live or not. And that thing, where you find yourself, even the way they got into my house, where they just break in, where I stay, there's security. But I just found them like inside the yard. So all those things, if put together, someone might just decide to say, no, I'll rather keep quiet and just let it go like that.
So how has that affected you after the adoptions? How are you adjusting to life?
Yeah, it has not been easy. It has not been easy. I'm trying to adjust, but it's something that even if you try to forget about it during the day, sometimes you dream about it in the night. And this fear of being taken by people that you do not even know. You don't even know whether the person is your neighbor. You don't even know if the person maybe is even your friend. You don't even know. You are always living in fear, and the fear of the unknown. Being taken by strangers and people who have got guns. And it was, like I said, it was during the curfew time, but these people could actually travel, like just proving to you that these people can do anything in this country without anything coming to them. because during the days no one was allowed to move after 6. But these guys came after 12. They picked me up. They drove to where they wanted to torture me, and actually came back and they went away. And not up to now, not even a policeman or anyone has actually said they saw their car or they did anything to them. The only time I then saw the pictures of the car was when I saw the video, like from the CCTV, that the same car which was actually used to abduct me is the same car that was used to abduct Tawanda Mcheyiwa, the Isuzu car, which is on the CCTV footage.
So, I mean, did you get any medical help, psychological help, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I did manage to get some medical help, and I'm still in the process of getting that medical help up to now. And psychologically, right now, after this session, I'm going to go for a psychological counseling. I'm actually booked for 2 o'clock. So yeah, and also I've been trying to talk to people, so that at least maybe I can try to find some, you know, when you talk about it, sometimes you try to relieve yourself. But yeah, like I said, it has never been easy, and I'm facing a lot of challenges physically and also psychologically. Some which are even difficult to talk about, in public. But yeah, I'm facing a lot of challenges.
Yeah. So, but do you think you are going to, be as active as you were before, or it is now affected the way you are going to view things?
Uh, it's actually in two ways. It's actually in two ways. The first thing is that the experience would, it's very obvious that the experience would change you into someone else, a different character, and the way you see things would probably be different. And also even the issue of trust, you then start, having trust issues, especially with people, because like when they came to my place, I actually believe that someone came with them and showed them where I stay. Ukuthi umuntu wakho nambani, it's something else. But like, because they then asked me after they'd already picked me ukuthi, unogara panambani, like kuti uhlala ku-number 1. They didn't even have, like, they were not carrying my home address. And I even asked myself, if they didn't have my address, how then did they manage to get to my place? So all those things, now you then start to have trust issues, because you don't even know how they go. I don't even know up to now who could have shown them where I stay. And the way I now also see things, even like after the torture and everything, the way you then perceive things, even when you are looking even at state security, like even the army, the police, everything is just different. I no longer have that respect that I used to have for them, and I no longer view them as my brothers like what I used to do, because I just feel like, these guys, they don't treat us as if we are ordinary Zimbabweans. We are civilians and we have got rights. Because when someone comes and just picks you during the night, that person is probably just telling you that you don't have rights. They can actually determine what happens to you any day, anytime, without you even doing anything. So, like, my views have totally changed. And I believe also that I'm probably stronger than what I was before. These things sometimes they harden you. You have your heart becomes a different one after the experiences.
But we have always had these discussions with people, and sometimes people say, we from a party level, say maybe you feel there are times when you feel like you're on your own and you didn't get the support. Do you think you got the support that you need?
Yeah, I got the support, but the other thing that we also have to take a look at is the party itself in a position to help anyone at the moment, because the party is bankrupt. Of course, it's not all about financial support, but the party is bankrupt, and like the way we are, the party is scattered at the moment. After the Supreme Court judgment, and a lot of things have been happening. People are being harassed, activists are all over, like people are just scattered. As we speak in Blawayo, most of the people are actually in hiding. The people that you should be looking up to say, no, they should be there when I now need help, they are also fearing for their lives. Because when they took me, almost everyone, like especially from the youth side, because these guys were mostly targeting youths, Omzaka and Otilia, and they were targeting young people. So most of the guys had to then flee. So the help that you'll be expecting to get from your comrades, you won't be able to get it. Why? Because those ones that you were looking up to will be also fearing for their lives. So that is the challenge that we're actually facing at party level and even at individual level.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. And what I find sad for me is that I spent the last 10 to 15 years covering stories around Kukurahundi and violence. And I still find that the same stories that happened in 1983, the same issues of people being abducted at night, disappearing, being beaten up in 1984, 1985, are the same things that have happened in 2020. And the questions that I always ask myself is that what has changed in Zimbabwe 40 years after independence? What has changed in Zimbabwe 2 years or 3 years after the removal of Mugabe from office? Have we changed the policies, the way we treat civilians or citizens? Have our rights improved or they are now worse? What kind of a country do we live in where someone can just be adopted, tortured, and they have nowhere to go, and the person would actually, boast that you are not going to do anything, we can kill you, and they are actually telling you that they are above the law. So these are some of the realities that sometimes we need to ask ourselves to say, what kind of a country do we live in? But also, I want to challenge our leaders to take time and ask themselves, what kind of legacy do they want to leave? What kind of people are they? And what do they want to be remembered for? Do they want to be remembered for liberating Zimbabwe and making it a better country? Or they want to be remembered as people who liberated Zimbabwe and performed worse than the Rhodesian government? I know there are a lot of people who have been tortured that are not going to be able to talk about it. There are a lot of people who are adopted that are never going to be going to be able to talk about. But as a country, I think we need to have a serious discussion to say, how do we solve our problems? Do we solve our problems by beating up each other? Do we solve our problems that say, if we don't agree, then we'll adapt you, beat you up until you agree with us? And many times people will tell you that the absence of violence does not mean the presence of peace. So the fact that Zimbabweans are quiet is not because they are happy. Most of the times it's because they are afraid to talk. They know what will happen to them if they dare raise their voices. And these days, it's no longer safe where they're talking on social media, you're talking in the streets, anything can happen to you. So it is a challenge that our liberators, our leaders should actually ask themselves, what kind of society are we trying to promote? Is this the Zimbabwe that we want? Is this the Zimbabwe that we fought for? How are we better from the Rhodesian government? How are we better from the Robert Mugabe Zimbabwe? Because we said we are now in the new Second Republic, we are now in the new dispensation. But what's new about what is happening in Zimbabwe? I think we really need to take stock of ourselves. And I would encourage institutions like the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, the Parliament of Zimbabwe, to actually have a session where they would debate about these things that are happening. We cannot have people adopted and we don't have the leaders talking about it. What is the problem? How best can we solve? What is this the way where our political differences are going to be settled by violence? I think we have seen a lot over the years. A lot more is still to happen. What is clear is that no Zimbabwean is safe, and sometimes there is no freedom of speech, and there's no freedom after speech. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. This is the Breakfast Club. Until we meet again in other programs, have a good day.